there'd been a lot of speculation by analysts that if this participation rate dropped below 50%, then the government would have been in trouble. As you said in the intro, there's a huge amount of disaffection amongst Cubans right now. It's palpable. The economic crisis is deep. They're going through a long economic crisis that is the deepest that they've been in since the 1990s. And given that there were only 470 candidates for 470 positions, and given that it's one-party state, we're not really talking about who's going to be elected here. The Cuban elections are nothing if not predictable. The question was participation. And on that metric, it's a victory for the government if the results are to be believed. We have seen over the last few years a significant fall in the amount of in the percentage of populations that of the population that votes. That's to say, abstentionism has increased. So, for example, in the last legislative elections in 2018, 86% of those eligible to vote voted, whereas today 70%. But compared to the region, and also compared to many European countries and the United States, Canada, the participation rate even today stands up pretty well.
So going forward then, Ed, what do you think this means for the president and for the opposition as well?
Well, the president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, remains by far the least popular Cuban president the country has had in the last 63 years of the Cuban Revolution. The only other two significant ones were Fidel and Raul Castro, of course, and they were hugely popular because of what happened in the first decades of the Cuban Revolution and the huge strides forward in terms of literacy rates and housing and health and other things that have been achieved. He's deeply unpopular because the economic situation is so dire and has been so dire for so long. So he will remain weak. But the opposition is weaker. There is an opposition in Cuba. In Cuba, it's growing, but it's very unorganized. It's not tolerated by the state. The state comes down on them like a ton of bricks. They're not, to all extents and purposes, they're not really allowed to stand, even though formally and legally they are really no opposition figure was amongst the 470. And increasingly, they're just choosing to leave the country. So the heart's not in it in the way that opposition figures are fighting, for example, just to take one example, in Iran right now. So the party's weaker than it has been in 60 years, but the opposition isn't really around.